In Victoria, we have a lot of rail lines, and a lot of them were axed in the 1970s. However, there are a few which are still around today that I think are worthy of closing. Now, this video shouldn't be too controversial. In fact, I would go as far as to say it's common knowledge. The Stony Point Line. As it stands, the Stony Point Line is near useless. The amount of traffic on that line is next to nothing, and the only thing keeping it afloat are the Long Island Steel trains. A boost in frequency isn't even necessary, as if people were going to use it, the service would already be used. So my proposal for the Stony Point Line is to cut it back to Long Island Junction, and remove the passenger service. In its place, a new bus route will be introduced, running from Frankston to Stony Point. The Alamein Line. The Alamein Line is a short and nubby line. It's one of the only places left on the Metropolitan network which is governed by free car trains, and that's pretty poor. The amount of people who use the line is not enough to warrant its continuous use and upkeep. The line also possesses several level crossings and a tram square, which delays traffic. So my proposal to fix all of these issues is by bringing more people to the area and closing the line fully. And what I mean by bringing more people back to the area is I mean lifting the tracks and bringing back the F6 freeway from Thomastown to Safety Beach. This freeway would run from Thomastown following the Darebin Creek, which would remove hundreds of recreational spaces because who needs those? And the freeway will travel down Station Street. This will make Fairfield much more accessible, and then blasting its way along the old outer circle alignment until reaching the freshly pulled up Alamein Line. From there, the freeway will run along the M1 until reaching State Route 22, which would be converted to a freeway, and then the two freeways would meet at the Dingley Bypass. Lilydale and Belgrave lines. Both the Lilydale and Belgrave lines have some of the last single-track sections of line in the whole of Melbourne, which limits services drastically. Due to the population density of the east, the single-track sections are a major capacity constraint. The inner eastern suburbs are also full of people, and trains are noisy, as well as take up space. To fix all of these issues, I propose the Lilydale and Belgrave lines are replaced with a one-seater double-line gondola system. The gondolas will be similar to cable trams, being pulled along by a wire. However, they will be one-seater, allowing more people to travel on the line and at any time they want. People will also be allowed to control the entire gondola, and they have full control of movement and braking. However, there are only two lines, one for gondolas going up and one for gondolas going down, so there will be no gondola overtaking at all. This should greatly increase frequency and save on space. The Pakenham Line. The Pakenham Line is one of the busiest suburban lines in Melbourne. Trains are constantly packed with people. Now, the Melbourne Metro Tunnel should allow more services to run. However, I believe there is a similar yet simpler solution to the overcrowding problem. By running services with exclusively single-car sprinters, jacking up fare prices, and decreasing frequency to every hour, magically, all the crowds have gone, as they are now taking private transport instead. So to combat the new problem of increased traffic, 4 extra lanes will be added to both the Monash Freeway and the Princess Highway, and the Pakenham Line in its current state will be reduced down to single track. The Ballarat Direct Line. The Ballarat Direct Line is extraordinarily windy and hilly. I mean, just look at the Warren Hep and Islington Banks. This inhibits the speeds Ballarat trains are able to travel to and from Ballarat. This line can, however, be completely bypassed. So, with the closure of the Ballarat Direct Line, trains can now be diverted via the Geelong Main Line. The new service would run express non-stop from Melbourne to Ballarat, and will also run through some of the most scenic parts of the country. Not only being relatively flat, but this will also allow for the 160 km/h speeds Ballarat residents are looking for. The Albion to Jacana Freight Line. The Albion to Jacana Freight Line is a lightly used freight line spanning Albion to Jacana. It handles a minute amount of broad gauge trains and an insignificant amount of standard gauge trains. The line is the only line that standard gauge trains can travel on into the city, and as it stands, it's horribly indirect. Broad gauge trains can run via Essendon to get to the city, which is far more direct. However, they will have to cram in with suburban trains, as well as climb the Glenroy Bank, being a steep issue for them. So my proposal is to close the Albion to Chicana freight line and build a SkyRail structure on top of CityLink, with 2 pairs of double-track dual gauge. All the stations of the suburban line are extremely outdated, so passengers will enjoy the new and modernized stations on the SkyRail, which will be built entirely out of Play-Doh. Suburban trains and standard gauge freight trains will be relegated to the new SkyRail structure. However, broad gauge freight trains will have the freedom to use the old main line. The Geelong Main Line. The Geelong Main Line is the oldest operating rail line in the state, and it's showing its age as the days go by. To strengthen the Geelong Main Line, and to save it from a certain doom, it shall be closed and replaced with a single-track, dual-gauge light rail line with only 1 passing loop at Little River. This will allow the Geelong Main Line to survive for a greater amount of time, as well as giving passengers the convenience of being able to disembark anywhere. Now, due to freight trains being extremely long, a new facility will have to be set up at Geelong to break those freight trains into 3 wagon-long segments, and they will be propelled up the main line to Melbourne by a Y-class diesel shunter at no more than 25 km per hour. Any and all passenger services will have to use C1 class trams, as they are the only trams fit for purpose. Flinders Street Viaduct. The Flinders Street Viaduct is possibly one of the most important piece of railway infrastructure in the entire state. So why do I think it needs to be closed? Well, there's just better options. In the 1970s, when the City Loop was being developed, there were plans to close the Flinders Street Viaduct, and I believe those plans should have been enacted. Not only is the viaduct over 100 years old, it's also an eyesore, not fitting in with the brutalist infrastructure at all. The space could also be turned into something useful, a high-rise car park stretching the entire length of the viaduct, which will allow no light to pass through down to Flinders Street. Now, you may be asking, how will trains get from one side to another? Well, I present to you shunting. Trains will terminate at either Richmond or Flinders Street, head into the City Loop, pop out at Southern Cross, and then they will reverse directions to go the other end, and continue the journey. An extended shunting neck, as well as a diesel shunter, will be provided for freight trains such as the Long Island Steel Train. Southern Cross at Flinders Street would also be demolished and sunk into a giant trench station underground, being turned into more or less concrete pits. Safety update. This last line isn't actually a line at all. When a train has broken down, guards of the train will place detonators on the line. These detonators are small explosive devices, and when a train runs over them, they produce a large popping sound. This sound warns drivers of either a train broken on the line or just danger. However, they are very small, so instead of using small explosives, instead I propose we use nuclear warheads, which is guaranteed to stop all oncoming traffic. With all of these closed lines, the network will not only be modernized, but it would be more attractive for people to use, as well as being cheaper to maintain. If you like this video, then please like and subscribe, and remember, happy April Fools.